I recently returned to the United States after almost 4 years of living abroad, and I'm staying for a few days at my uncle's house in New Jersey. Now, my grandmother had died a few years ago back in 2018, and my uncle, as it turns out, had collected a number of boxes from her house, and a lot of them are filled with documents and pictures. And when I came downstairs to the basement, I noticed all of these boxes laying on the floor. So I asked my uncle if I could go through them, and he said absolutely. And lo and behold, it ended up being a treasure trove of information. I mean, this is every genealogist's dream, to just find tons of old pictures, old documents of my family, and I'm so happy to share them with you. So I've got here a bunch of boxes of things. I've got a lot of photos, such as this one of my grandmother, this one of my grandparents, and what I'm going to do now is kind of walk you through some of the best findings that I was able to acquire, because, like I said, this is just really a gold mine. So the first amazing thing I was able to find were these two photographs, as it turns out, of my fourth great-grandfather, Avram Mani Saxonov. Now, this is a guy who I only knew by name because he never came to America. There are no online records, as far as I'm aware, for the family. The only reason I knew his last name is because my third great-grandma and her brother had his name listed on their gravestones. But when I looked at the photograph, there was a little scrawled note written on the back saying that this is Avram Mani Sax, and apparently it's with his second wife, which makes me think that my fourth great-grandmother probably died relatively young, because two of her kids named their firstborn daughter after her, I'm pretty sure, and it looks like he had more children with his second wife. So I wouldn't be surprised if she died really young, and maybe there aren't a whole lot of photos or any photos of her available. The really cool thing about this photo is that in Russian on the back, it shows the photo studio that this picture was taken at, which was in the city of Bakhmut, or also known as Artemivsk, in Ukraine. And this is really important because I had seen this name pop up on a couple of documents, but I wasn't 100% sure if the family was from there. But as it turns out, definitely that branch of the family lived in Bakhmut, Ukraine, which means that I now know where another branch of my family came from. Another amazing thing I found were these photos of my great-great-grandmother, Julia Sorokin, who married Reuben Kushner. And here's one of her when she was much younger. It's her with a bunch of her kids. There's also these other ones of her with her husband. As you can see, the one on the left is really, really old school. I mean, it looks like something out of a Charlie Chaplin movie. Really, really cool. So I was pleased. I already had some photos of them, but I didn't have these photos. And so I just have more information, more things to scan and add to my collection of photos. I mean, I'm really starting to build a solid repertoire of family photos. So maybe I'll make an album or something. Now, moving on to the documents, we've got some really cool things. My grandfather's 1940 high school diploma, which, as you can see, is still in really good shape. It's been preserved inside of this frame, and that's just pretty nuts to think that he graduated high school that long ago. One of the coolest documents that I found by far was this mortgage from 1944 taken out by my great-great-grandmother, Rose Minnick, for $4,000 to purchase a home. And you might be sitting here thinking, well, $4,000 back in 1940s is a lot of money. I looked it up, and apparently it's about $66,000 in today's dollars, which is still extremely cheap for a house no matter which way you look at it. And there's also a little book with mortgage payments that she must have kept every time she paid down, some of the interest and the principal. There are also a huge amount of photos of people who I have no idea who they are, but they're in a section of the box that belonged to my grandfather, Joseph Paley. So I imagine it's people on those lines of the family, perhaps pictures of my great-grandparents. I think this little photo over here is my great-grandfather, Louis Paley, taken most likely shortly after he arrived to the US. He's very, very young in this photo, but I'm really hoping to find a picture of my great-grandmother, Rose Minnick. So I'm gonna run some of these by my uncle because I'm pretty sure he would recognize her, and she's one of the only great-grandparents that I don't yet have a confirmed photograph of, but there's almost certainly one in here of her. I was also able to find a bunch of really cool little knickknacks, like the report cards of both my father and my uncle, going all the way back to like preschool and first grade back in the 60s and 70s. So that was a crazy trip to read these report cards from them. And overall, the stuff in these boxes gives a really good historical overview of my father, my grandparents, and a few generations going back. I mean, from children all the way up to old age. Because some of these photos are also of their grandchildren. So there's photos of me, of my sisters. There are photos of my great uncles and my great aunts and things like that. To really give this box a good run through and figure out maybe who some of these hidden people are is a big project. It's going to take some time. So I'm kind of still in the process of segregating over some of the ones that I think have a high chance of being important relatives, separating them and maybe scanning them, then contacting relatives and finding out if they know who they are. Sometimes the people are written on the back of the photo, but in a lot of cases I've opened up the frames and maybe there's just like a number written on it, not really anything about who they are. But I know for sure there are more ancestors in there, and those are really the photos that I'm looking for the most. So to find my fourth great-grandfather, I mean, is insane, especially given the fact that we don't know anything about him. And I really think there are going to be more of those kinds of people in these boxes. So anyways, thank you so much for watching. If you have a story yourself of finding some really cool family artifacts, let me know in the comment section below. Also, be sure to follow me on social media. I've included links to both my Instagram and my Twitter. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.